herbs for $10. Give your garden and lawn the full spring treatment. Springfest, a festival of fun and savings for your garden and total home. Lowe's, home to any budget, home to any possibility. Offers valid through 4/28 while supplies last. In-store only. Selection varies by location. U.S. only, excluding Alaska and Hawaii.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And the good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful April the 26th, 2021. Ronald Deportes. Bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're doing okay down here. I guess they started the bonfire all in Cleveland, Ohio, because the official clock has started ticking, and the NFL draft is just 72 hours away.
Yep.
Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They'll be there to catch some of those young men when they collapse after they found out they just become a billionaire.
It's all fair love and war. Want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there staring at a still picture. Man, love pausing, Big C. I know a lot of good old boys are pausing, hoping they get the chance to make their dreams come true playing NFL football, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced, helping veterans and their loved ones get help, Big C. Why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, as we go around celebrating all the great events that occur in this country, Charlton, we need to tip our hat to the men and women that made all of that possible. And that's called the great veterans of our military, Charlton. But unfortunately, we lose over 24 of those great veterans a day to suicide. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but we need more Americans to be more concerned about the plight of our great veterans. We always celebrate every event that goes on, whether it's a holiday or whether it's a sporting event. But those veterans are the reasons why we can do that. And we need to give a little more consideration to them as a country, as a government. Thinking about our veterans allow us to sleep at ease at night, Charlton.
We do sleep at ease at night, Big C. I want to say all they got to do is pick up the phone and call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 to get some help for our veterans. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home with weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, helping put people back to work, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender on the wholesale side in the country. Really appreciate that. Also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. My goodness. You know, you did talk about Cleveland, Big C, and how a lot of the athletes are going to see their dreams come true. I'll cover that part in the second half of the show. But wouldn't you know, that having this year's celebration in Cleveland, they happened to skip Las Vegas. That's not right, Big C. They should have gone back to Las Vegas for a makeup call, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, a whole lot of people are skipping Las Vegas, Charlton, but when your time has come and your time is gone, you can't go back and relive those moments. It's unfortunate what the pandemic did. It'd be like going back replaying the 2020 season, Charlton.
Yeah, it would be going back and playing that season, but I'm sure a lot of guys would have had a lot more fun in Vegas than they have. And I mean, Cleveland's all fair and love and war. Nothing on Cleveland. I'm sure that's the getaway for a lot of guys when they want to get out of town and have a good time doing whatever they do in the sports, youth sports, Big C. It's all fair and love and war. You know, just over the weekend, there was such celebration in Northern California because everywhere you look, Big C, all the newscasters were talking about this rain that was going to hit Northern California and solve all of our drought problems. Big C, there was about enough rain to fill up half of a cereal bowl, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we get rain down here on a consistent basis. I think over a couple-day span, we had about 6 inches of rain that fell. So we had a deluge and everything was soaked, but we're back in the 80s again today.
Yeah, back in the 80s. I wish it was all fair and love and war. I want to go down to the state of Florida where it rains, Big C. And, you know, everybody's so hyped about fighting and watching UFC 261 and watching the Cameron Usman is amazing in the way that he can take people apart in the ring. And I know that everybody has their own thoughts about who the best fighters are. Jorge Masvidal said he didn't have enough time for the first fight across in Dubai. And that this fight, Big C, he said it was going to be different because he had a chance to train. And he was saying how that Usman, for some reason, people don't show him respect. The guy's 19-1. And he puts everybody to sleep, Big C. It's either put them to sleep or they just continue to fight. Why can't he get respect from guys that don't have the belt, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, everybody's going to challenge everybody when it comes to fighting, Charlton, because you want to be the guy hosting the belt. I mean, until he is stripped of that title, he's only lost the original fight of his career, and he's continued to dominate the ring ever since then.
Yeah. It's something about when I look at him, and obviously, I mean, just seeing what it is in that fight business is a tough business. So, of course, you gotta pump yourself up. If you can't pump up yourself, who's going to do it for you? But when we look at what he was able to do in a guy that just pretty much knocked him out cold in the second round, Big C, I still feel when you look at some of the top fighters in the UFC, a lot of these guys are coming from the African continent, Big C. It's like, I know they fight everywhere in the world, but they don't go to Africa for some reason. But we said we have 3 champions from the African continent, Ngannou, and now you have Usman, and there's another that I might be forgetting the name. I think it's Adesanya, Big C, but he just lost his first fight. But what does that say about the continent of Africa, that the 3 champions in UFC come from the continent of Africa, and it's not, they can't get the UFC to go there, Big C?
Well, when you look at the UFC in total, there's very few champions from the United States. This is a worldwide, match thing that you bring the fighters in, and you're just looking for the best. One of the things about the UFC versus what you had in the boxing ring is that that's an individual that's recognized around the world, and everybody knows who it is.
Yeah.
When you look at the UFC, it's more of a cult. And so you're going out there trying to find tough individuals that are hungry.
Yeah.
And in that profession, they don't last long.
Yeah, they really don't last long, Big C. We've heard of how dominant Anderson Silva has been in the UFC fighting, Big C. He'd had a strong winning streak of 16 in a row. George St. Pierre is doing his thing back in the day also. But John Jones, everybody wants to fight these. I heard Dana White, maybe it wasn't Dana White, it was another fighter, former fighter, that was asking Usman, who you going to fight next? And it's amazing how they've beaten up so many people at the top of the mountain. They want to go back and give everybody a rematch. Boxing doesn't want to give people a rematch. They oftentimes look for something new because there's more guys out there that can fight you, Big C. But like you say, they kind of chew them up and spit them out fast. They want guys to get beat up the second time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's about a card, and is that card marketable when you're looking at an opponent?
Yeah.
I mean, just because you bring somebody in that's new, everybody's not enamored with them. They're looking for the names and the rematches. That's what fighting has always been about, the names. I mean, not the upstart.
Yeah, the names and not the upstarts. But sometime if you got a good things going, Dana White, got the 15,000 fans in there. They were chanting for the home state kid, Big C. Didn't quite work out that way. I remember, and I respect all the guys that get in the MMA, in the octagon, Big C. Being around a lot of the fighters in Northern California, you can't get to that level unless you got some extra juice in your veins, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Something in your veins. But when you get 15,000 fans, and they showed up for the first time in nearly a year inside the United States, I don't know if you saw the fight, but I saw the fight as well as some replay of the fight. It is good to have the energy of the crowd. At the same time, it's like the crowd didn't make it a better fight for the hometown kid, though, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, everybody wants the enthusiasm of a crowd, Charlton, when they're dealing with a sporting event. And I don't think that, because you have a crowd, it's going to favor one side or another, Charlton. When you're out there in the ring, you basically focus on your opponent. You're able to block all that exterior out. I mean, you do know it's a crowd. But if you're paying attention to the crowd, you're going to get knocked out.
Yeah, maybe that's what Mcdougall was doing. He was giving the crowd, hugs and kisses. And Usman said, I'm going to beat you up in front of your crowd. It's all fair level war. But congratulations, Kamaru Usman. He really is out there, outside of Ngannou, Big C. He's the best fighter pound for pound in the whole UFC universe, even though he doesn't get the respect or the marketability. He can't even fight in his own country. And he's the number one guy in the universe. Don't fight anywhere but there. And Dana White should maybe open his eyes and see there's a lot of good fighters that you have the chance to bring onto your scene and make it more challenging, if that makes sense to you. Big C, the pitch, hit deep, right field, back to the wall, home run. I must have been thinking about Tatis when he was doing his thing against the Dodgers, but I want to take you down to a state south of California, Arizona Diamondbacks. This good old boy used to be up in San Francisco. His name is Madison Bumgarner, Big C, and my goodness, can he pitch? But sometimes they make a little bit too much about nothing, just my opinion. Arizona Diamondbacks, veteran left-hander, southpaw Madison Bumgarner, trolled 7 hitless innings against the Atlanta Braves on Sunday. Arizona's 7-0 win over Atlanta. The fact that it was 7-0 is amazing, but the fact that it came against Atlanta and the fact that it was hitless, that's impressive, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it was a very impressive outing, Charlton. Unfortunately, Major Leagues will not recognize this as a no-hitter because it was the second game of a doubleheader, and in doubleheaders, you're only going 7 innings. And it's amazing that Major League Baseball is doing that, because if you have a rainout after 7 innings and you have a no-hitter going, Charlton, they classify that in the record books as a no-hitter.
That's right.
And if you lose a game after 7 innings, in a 7-inning game, Charlton, they classify that as a loss. But Major League Baseball made these rules, and it's unclear to me why they would do that. If you throw a perfect game or a no-hitter over a 7-inning stretch, they say it doesn't count in the record book, but yet Major League Baseball made the record.
Yeah, and the Atlanta Braves are saying, what do you mean it doesn't count? We didn't score. They scored 7 times, and they couldn't hit them. When you think about the game was part of the doubleheader, as you mentioned, spanned just 7 innings. Bumgarner's effort really did not get officially counted as a no-hitter. It's like, do you believe your eyes, or you believe some playbook, Big C, or some rule book? When you think about Major League Baseball, explain the rules, clarification, according to the Elias Sports Bureau, the Major League Baseball official statistician, neither the team nor an individual pitcher will be credited with a no-hitter on a no-scheduled 7-inning game of a doubleheader unless the game goes to extra innings. I mean, the Dodgers and the Padres went extra innings, Big C. They count that score in the results of it. If the contest extends to at least 9 innings and that pitcher or a team's group of pitchers has still not allowed a hit, then it goes down in history books as a no-no. And for athletes, it's hard enough to do what he was able to do. But sometimes, if the rules are there to be understood by all before the game and the no-hitter, then I guess the rules apply after the game with a no-hitter. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but you have to understand, if you're only allowed to play 7 innings in a game, and the game is called after 7 innings,
yeah,
not by the players, but by the umpire, Charlton, in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
But Baumgartner went out there and threw a no-hitter, and at the end of that 7 innings of the scheduled game, Charlton, they said it doesn't count.
Yeah.
And so I can understand the frustration of Madison Bumgarner in this situation, Charlton. And also looking at the Atlanta Braves in this scenario. They played 14 innings and only scored 1 run against the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, and that probably won't happen again against that juggernaut of an offense for the Atlanta Braves. But it is one of those rare moments where you see something that you probably won't see often in the game of baseball with all the clubs involved, Big C. But again, the rules are the rules, and nobody's going to change them because of what a guy did after he already knew the rules, and it's just part of life, how it works. But Madison Bumgarner was doing his thing on the mound, and the Atlanta Braves obviously had a hard time. They didn't understand the rules, but they understood they couldn't hit him, and that's all fair and love and war, Big C. But congratulations. I want to go to the Kansas City Royals, Big C. On Sunday, they rode another dominant outing from Danny Duffy to a 4-0 win over the Detroit Tigers, the box score, Big C. That's the Royals' 4th straight win, which means they maintain a 2-game lead over the Chicago White Sox in the AL Central, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Kansas City playing out there in Kauffman Field, Charlton, is having an amazing season. Leading the American League West, Charlton, in percentage points, holding on to first place. And this is a team that nobody gave much consideration to at the start of this season. Everyone was looking elsewhere, but the Royals said, we're not having that.
Yeah, that's a nice-looking ballpark. You know, even when you think about Kauffman Stadium, along with Arrowhead Stadium, those stadiums have stood the test of time. That same ballpark, football stadium, and baseball stadium, it reminded me of what they used to have over here in Oakland when the Raiders were in town. Of course, the A's are still there. And then Golden State, they had the football stadium and the baseball stadium in that same parking lot, kind of out in an industrial park. They haven't succumbed to the pressures to put something downtown, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's a beautiful facility where it sits out there, Charlton. The city has grown out to that area, but when they put it out there, it was like in Buffalo when they built Rick Stadium. It was out in Orchard Park, and it was basically nothing but orchards out there, and everything grows to the stadium.
Yeah, it's all growing to the stadium. It's still a little bit different. It's kind of a throwback to yesteryear. Everybody's trying to put something downtown, it seems, but that's still a nice setup. Kansas City triumphed with a pair of to end of the Oakland A's win streak, Big C, also means that the upstart Royals, at least for one night's sleep, they have the best record in the American League. For who would ever thought that, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the A's had been red hot and prior to showing up there in Kansas City. I believe they had won 11 or 12 games in a row, Charlton, but the Royals put a halt to that succession.
Yeah, they put a halt to that, Big C. So the Royals now check in at 13-7, which puts them percentage points ahead of the 14-8 Athletics. The A's got off to a really bad start, and then they went on that hitting streak, Big C, and they just had it cooled off just a little bit over the weekend. But think about it, Big C. Of that, 11 of the 20 games have come against teams that made the expanded playoffs in 2020. So that's a good sign in the right direction, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it means that you're beating teams that know how to win, Charlton. Everybody always wants to look at a team record when they're playing against non-contenders. When you can go out there and beat the playoff caliber Cubs night after night, Charlton, it shows that you have the maturity to get to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I saw? I mean, baseball to me is fabulous. I love the way that the crowd, for some of the stadiums, are starting to get back into it, Big C, and we don't have that for everybody. But I do know that I look at everything that happened in the UFC. 15,000 on hand, that's nothing for a baseball crowd. Like a decent basketball stadium, arena crowd, Big C. And I look at places like Dodger Stadium, and you have the Dodgers, and you have the Padres, and they have hardly any fans because of this is how COVID's gone. But you still see some of the best baseball to have the Dodgers go up over the Padres, and then the Padres, I think they were up 7-1, Big C. And it's all about who's playing in that game. What kind of pitcher's going to pitch to Tatis and not get hit out of the ballpark, Big C? But give me that. To me, that was some exciting baseball. I don't know if you saw the game, but people say we got to have crowds in the stands, Big C. But seeing that Dodgers and Padres, that game was amazing without a lot of fans, Big C. Your thoughts?
No, I didn't witness the contest, but Tatis by himself is a grown man out there on the diamond, Charlton. I mean, he walked up and let the Dodgers know whose house it was by taking them yards twice. And, you know, in dominant fashion. I mean, even one home run, he took a peek back at the catcher to catch the sign and launched it out of the ballpark. But, you know, the Dodgers got to be smiting a little bit. You know, if the Padres ever get healthy, they're going to have a run for their money out there in the West.
Yeah, they are healthy. I mean, everybody was saying when the season began, maybe the best two teams, at least in the National League, would be the Dodgers and also the Padres. I know you're going to have – the Atlanta's going to make some noise too. Maybe Philadelphia, maybe the Mets, but there's a lot of good teams, you know, that are going to be making a lot of noise when it comes to baseball. Orioles 8-1 over the Athletics. The Mets 4-0 over the Nationals. The Blue Jays squeaked out a win over the Rays. The Yankees can't find a way to win, Big C. They have an amazing payroll, a great roster. They have some household names, and the Cleveland Indians get 7-3. They got them yesterday again, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they have household names anymore, Josh. It's been a long time since they won the World Series.
Yeah.
They just play in the most famous ballpark.
Yeah, but Stanton and Judge, the two guys that people want to see knock the ball over the splits, but the Yankees are struggling a little bit, Big C. Boston Red Sox get a 5-3 win over the Mariners. The Royals with a 4-0 win over the Tigers. Diamondbacks over the Braves in a 5-1. And you think about the Angels 4-2 over the Astros. Mike Trout's been coming out, getting a little bit better behind the plate after being out last year. Also had the injury and then had a newborn child. So maybe he's getting some sleep now, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, just one of the greatest players in baseball. You're not going to hold Mike Trout down. It's only a matter till he catches his stride.
Only a matter before he catches the Twins 6-2 at the Pirates 6-2 over the Twins. The Cardinals 5-2 over the Reds. The Brewers 6-0 over the Cubs. It was the Rockies. You know, when you get up high in altitude, Big C, that ball can fly. I mean, when you get up really high in the altitude, that ball flies, Big C, 12-2 over the Phillies. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, they're putting on a display because that's where the All-Star game is going to be playing this year, Charlton, so they get the fans excited.
Getting the fans excited. And then the Giants 4-3 over the Marlins. Diamondbacks again 7-0 over the Braves. And that concluded. I want to take you back to the thoughts of the Padres 8, the Dodgers 7. Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine, to me is one of the most beautiful places to watch a baseball game, and everybody can say that. I think Oracle Ballpark in San Francisco, I still want to call it Pac Ballpark, is the best place right there with McCovey Cove and being able to see the backdrop of downtown San Francisco with the Bay Bridge and over into the East Bay Hills. But there's something about this series. They built that new Petco Park down in San Diego, and then the Dodgers have the old stadium that everybody loves. They put a lot of renovation into it. But that is what baseball needs. It has to have power against power, where you see both teams, they have home run hitters as well as shutout pitchers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got that across the major leagues, you know, when you look at all the teams, Charlton. I mean, it was a tremendous series. I think the Padres took 4 out of 5 there at Chavez Ravine, so the Dodgers are trying to regroup themselves.
Yeah, they got to regroup themselves. Today, the Royals are playing at the Tigers, the Twins, and the Indians are on the way, Big C. The Yankees and the Orioles, I'm not going to get into scores, but the Yankees got to get somebody to swing the bat, Big C. The Braves and the Cubs are matching up today. The Athletics and the Rays should be a great game down in Tampa, Big C. This Rays team, even though they had a chance to win last year's World Series, but they had a good manager that wasn't happy when his guy couldn't be hit and brought him out after the 7th, Big C. The A's and the Rays might be the most exciting matchup outside of the Dodgers and the Padres, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's just early in the baseball season, Charlton. You still got 130 games left to play. They'll figure it out after 100.
Yeah, they'll figure it out pretty soon. It's all fair in Love and War. I can't wait until we get some more of some great baseball being played the way we've seen it over the last couple of weeks. It's all fair in Love and War. Baseball is still new and it's fresh, and everybody's still wet behind the ears. I want to take you to a story that I heard a long time ago, because we're coming up to just a couple of days left in the month of April, Big C. And we started this season. I mean, April's been interesting. We're letting some fans back into the arenas or to the ballparks. They honored down in Georgia, you know, Hank Aaron, Big C. There's always honoring a Jackie Robinson Day, and now we're coming into a season where it seems like, I don't know if it's right about you, but it seems like COVID maybe just pushed more and more behind the scenes, as people want to say they want to get out to the ballparks. And I want to ask you, are we doing it too soon? Because I just heard by the CDC in India is rising. And the other place, they even talking about maybe putting a pause on the Olympics in Japan. What is it about our Major League Sports teams that are acting like the CDC is old news, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not about whether we're doing it too soon, Charles. It's up to individuals in America what they want to do. I mean, the ban has been lifted in a lot of states about social distancing, so it's up to the intelligence or lack of intelligence of the individuals who want to be in mass crowds.
Yeah, I thought about that when I was watching that UFC fight. I know people can say, hey, they were vaccinated, etc. And there are places where people have been vaccinated, but they're still having some spike and some rise. But sometimes people can close their eyes, and everybody's going to have to do what they want to do. We're going to take what's called the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. When we come back, I want to talk more about what's going on in the world of NBA basketball. Steph Curry still setting records. And then Durant comes back, and as if he never left off, in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. My goodness, NBA basketball is fantastic, depending on who you ask. You know, whether it's I guess teams don't want to hold on to the top spot, whether it's Philadelphia, Big C, whether it's going to be the Phoenix Suns or the Brooklyn Nets. People just don't want to seem to hold on to that spot, that top spot. NBA basketball, a 119-110 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers on Sunday. The Washington Wizards, Big C, no one really thinks about this. The Washington Wizards, they extended their winning streak to 8 games. Would you believe it marks the longest string of victories by the franchise since Michael Jordan suited up for the team after coming out of retirement in the second time in 2001? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is a team that's led by Bradley Beal. You know, he and Steph Curry are fighting it out for the leading scorer in the NBA. Russell Westbrook is still contributing his triple-doubles on almost a nightly basis, Charlton. But this is a young team. Rudy Hachimura has stepped up and really delivered as a rookie.
Yep.
And they found their stride here in the latter part of the season with about 20 games to go.
Yeah, when you think about Russell Westbrook, I know people can say, well, you know, they won't win with Russell Westbrook, but the guy hustles as much as anybody, and he can rebound with the big guys, Big C. And you look at the Bradley Beal, think about what he's been doing. He's a star player. This guard has scored, he dropped 33 points to help Washington overcome an 8-point deficit early in the fourth quarter. And they topped Cleveland. It wasn't like they topped the Brooklyn Nets, Big C, or the Philadelphia 76ers. But he is a scoring leader in this league. But he, just like a Chris Paul's not a scoring leader, but everywhere he goes, they make the playoffs or they're a threat to knock somebody off. What is it about Bradley Beal that's not necessarily a TV favorite, even though he's one of the top scorers, all year, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not that he's not a TV favorite, Charlton. It's about the broadcast networks and who they want to broadcast. Bradley Beal has been a bona fide star in the NBA the last 3 years. He's been the leading scorer there in Washington for the last 3 years. Matter of fact, he's such a dynamic scorer, they allowed him to get rid of John Wall, who was the franchise player.
That's right.
And he took that leading role. The team has always done better with him in the leading role versus everyone else.
Yeah, they've done better with him in the leading role. And I know, and I'm not knocking anybody, anyone that can play in that game, more power to you. But it is at times, you would think that the players that are scoring the most would be more of a television coverage. And I'm not knocking anyone in New Orleans, but I think the Pelicans have been on national programs more than Washington has, and Washington has better scorer. And a dynamic duo, in my opinion, in Westbrook and also Beal, it'd be great if they showcase them more on NBA basketball, Big C. But I'm not the one making the choices about who they showcase when they decide to go out and get somebody on television. And speaking of comeback, you know, the great LL Cool J, don't call it a comeback. The great Kevin Durant turning into a super sub, Big C. Durant came off the bench, dropping 33 points in his latest return from his injury, and the Brooklyn Nets beat the Phoenix Suns 128-119. Now, this was a matchup, as people were billing it, Big C, maybe a potential NBA Finals match. I don't know if we can say that, but it seems like Brooklyn, it just seems like somebody's going to get hurt again because we still don't have Harden. And Irving had a great game. He scored 1 point more than Durant. But can Durant last the duration of the playoffs if every time someone bumps him, he seems to come up with a hitch in his giddy-up? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think a point that was proven in this game is that coming back off injury, that Kevin Durant was much better than Anthony Davis, who had a paltry 4 points out there for the Lakers the other night. Here's a guy that walked into the lineup, Charlton, coming off the bench, and it was almost like he had never missed a game. He came right in stride with the New York Knicks and was the second leading scorer on the night.
Yeah, second leading scorer on the night. Different kind of injuries for Davis and Durant, but Durant, obviously one of the best shooters the NBA's ever seen, in my opinion. And when you think about the matchup, the two of the NBA top teams, Kyrie Irving dropped 34, and then Blake Griffin had 15 to help the Eastern Conference leaders improve to 25-7 at home and 20-6 against the Western teams. But I go back to that same question. Sometimes people want to know, can we count on you night in and night out? Durant's been out for the second time this season, and he's back now. But he said it's like riding a bicycle. He doesn't miss a beat. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he didn't miss a beat. I mean, when you get a quad injury, it's very difficult for a long, angular player in the NBA, and that's what he had coming back off that quad injury, Charlton.
Yeah.
But he showed that there was no difference in his play, that he was able to pick up where he left off, where you didn't get that from Anthony Davis, who struggled trying to get in rhythm with the Lakers.
Yeah, different kind of injury and different kind of player. But when you think about what Durant does, if you're Brooklyn, and I know I don't know what's going on with Philadelphia. We'll get into them in a little bit. But when I look at Brooklyn, and if Durant's going to play, I don't even say he's 100% yet, but he was well enough to play and to drop 33 points when he's not even 100%. It looks good for Brooklyn. Kyrie Irving, again, same kind of personality. I guess people can't really tell if he's going to be in the game or not. But when he drops 34 points, outscoring Durant, Big C, but can you count on him to be there down the stretch? How do you assess those two together without maybe what people thought would be the MVP of the league and Harden? How do you look at Kyrie Irving and also Durant being there if Harden doesn't come back healthy? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you really can't look at Kyrie Irving as outscoring Durant in the game. Durant only played 22 minutes and had 33 points. So if you look at point production per minute, he outscored everybody on the court that night.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's the differential between what you can guarantee to get out of Durant versus what you can guarantee to get out of Davis. Regardless of the injury, you're still playing on the same NBA court.
Yeah.
And that rim is still 10 feet off the floor, and that key is still 12 feet wide. If you can't get it in that basket, you can't get it in.
Yeah, can't get it in the basket, you can't get it in unless you get a foul and they send you to the line. It's all fair level war. Do you put anything into the fact that they're 25-7 against the Eastern Conference and they're 20-6 against the Western Conference, and you're still going to we still got a long way to go until we get to the playoffs, but they're having more success against the Eastern Conference. The Western Conference has better records, Big C, but they only have 6 losses against teams from the West. And when you look at that, Devin Booker, he dropped 36 points, so he outscored everybody on the Brooklyn squad. But they were coming from behind a lot too. The great DeAndre Ayton had 20 points and 13 rebounds for the Suns. The number 2 team in the West so far, I mean, who knows what's going to be next week, have lost consecutive games for just the first time since a 3-game skid back in January. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you can't count your young chickens before they hatch out there on the West Coast, Charlton. But they have a better record against the West Coast than what they have against the East Coast. They show that there's nobody on the West Coast that's equal to what they can do when they put that point production up.
Yeah, it's all fair and love and war. It's just about who matches up. It's about matchups, and everybody has their own thoughts about matchups, Big C. I know everybody is looking forward to just seeing everybody healthy. That's what I'd love to see. When you think about some of the finals yesterday, the Hornets won 25 over the Celtics 114, and the Boston Celtics, when they had that great Jason Tatum and Steph Curry performance, Big C, in Boston, it looked like Boston was finding their stride. And then they get blown out on the road by the Charlotte Hornets. So what's up with Boston as a team that people want to see get back into the swing of things, at least one of the top 4 seeds? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, both of those teams will be in the playoffs. Charlotte is much improved with the lineup that they had this year, Charlton.
Yeah.
Boston, I mean, when you think about them, they won 8 of their last 12 games, which is no slouch. Brad Stevens got the team playing the way that they should. They just had an interconference game that they dropped.
Yeah, they had a game but they were blown out. It wasn't like they dropped it by a possession, Big C. It's like you can't lose by 21 points and consider yourself.
Well, a lot of times when you get to the fourth quarter and the lead seems to be insurmountable, you'll take your starters out of the game and get them some leg rest, Charlton, and that's what Bradley Stevens did with the Celtics against Charlotte. Once he saw that the game was out of hand, he took the starters out, doing a little load management.
Yeah, he put it on pause for some load management because you see the Nets won 28-119 over the Suns. Obviously, the Suns, they got to regroup again because they were right at the top of the mountain. But again, it's like the basketball dribbling. It comes and goes depending on who has possession. The Grizzlies with a 120-113 win over the Portland Trailblazers. And I know everybody was thinking that Portland's going to be one of these maybe top 4 seeds in the West. But it seems like there's something up with the chemistry. I don't know what it is, Big C. We have Dollar Dame is always a highlight reel. But then when you look at what they're doing, they're kind of struggling going down the stretch. And you don't look at the Memphis Grizzlies as being a dominant team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Jay Morant is one of the rising stars in the NBA, and he can play against any guard in the NBA. The Portland Trail Blazers will never have success as long as Dame Lillard is on that team. He takes the rest of his offense out of continuity. When you walk across the half court and you're willing to fire up a shot anywhere between 35 and 45 feet, Charlton, you don't allow your teammates to get set up around the rim, and that's what Dame Lillard does too often. And so he has teammates that are disenchanted about playing with him.
Yeah, they start wanting to watch. Is this guy going to shoot it or pass it? I think Dollar Dame's got to work on that team concept that Chris Paul has. Just my opinion, Big C. We mentioned the Wizards 119 over the Cavaliers. And then a game that I thought was interesting, you have the Pacers 131 over the Magic 112. But I want to bring it to Golden State and the Sacramento Kings. Steph Curry got back on strike, got over 30 points again. I think he had 37 points. I might be off by a point or two there. But it was a game where the Kings were coming down the stretch where they maybe had a chance. He and Buddy Hield were going tit for tat in three-point range. But something I noticed about Curry also can be a top guy in assists and a top guy in scoring. And then Draymond Green, he's been averaging assists. Unlike you think that he's a point guard, Draymond Green. He's the guy down in the paint, has a chance to get a 5-foot layup, and then he'll hand off to somebody else to get the assist in the basket. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Draymond Green has led the Golden State Warriors in assists the last 5 years. People underrate his can ability, Charlton, as far as what he delivers on the floor. I mean, he's not that far off from averaging a triple-double.
Yeah.
People are so enamored by watching the three-point shot, they forget about the yeoman work that someone like Draymond Green does. But, I mean, the Sacramento Kings are what the Sacramento Kings are.
Yeah.
Yes, they make the game interesting, but they don't know how to win consistently.
Yeah, don't know how to win just consistently. I want to take you back to a Saturday game because the Lakers are playing a game they got to win tonight, in my opinion. They don't want to go on a skid. But the Mavericks 108, the Lakers 93. It was a close game in the fourth period, Big C. And then it's as if something happened, a lack of continuity. Maybe Davis needs more time to get back into shape or whatever it is. But if he's going to be the guy they count on, they got to make sure that he's in shape. But then the great Luka Doncic outperformed everybody on the Lakers team in a 108-93 win. You can't go and lose a game by 15 points. Well, they don't have King James, but I'll give that's a caveat, Big C. But that's not a good sight, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's the same as you said about Boston and Charlotte. Here it is. You're playing a team within the division, and you get drubbed by 15 points. It shows that Anthony Davis can't lead a team, regardless coming back off injury. I mean, Kevin Durant just came back off injury, and he showed that he was still that dominant player with 33 points in 22 minutes.
Yeah.
Davis played basically the same amount of minutes and was only able to get 2 baskets from the floor, Charlton. So, I mean, when you're 6'10" and you can't get it in the rim, I mean, you need to adjust your game.
Yeah, again, sometimes players play a little bit like they're trying not to re-injure themselves, and maybe that's what it is, but they're going to have to figure that out before the playoffs get around. And maybe a game a lot like what we saw with Brooklyn and Phoenix, Big C, the Atlanta Hawks, that I thought would be a playoff team, especially coming out of the All-Star break, Big C, with a 111-104 win over the Milwaukee Bucks in a game where, Williams, I guess he took it personal. He made his own chicken wings this time, Big C. You thought?
Well, Lou Williams is a guy, Charlton. I mean, he's back home in Atlanta playing solid basketball. The Hawks are in fourth place in the East, going to make a deep playoff run. This is a team that's full of shooters, full of young legs, and when you got McMillan, who's taken over since the All-Star break as a head coach, has him back on the right track.
Yeah, it has him back on the right track. And give that man his chicken wings when he wants his chicken wings. It's all fair. In Level War, the great Williams doing his thing, Big C. Today's games, the Spurs at the Wizards, the Lakers at the Magic. And they got to get a win for the West Coast, Big C. The Thunder at the 76ers. Philadelphia, talk about a team that's been struggling over the last couple of games. They're also playing like they have a hitch in their giddy-up, Big C. Your thoughts?
I don't know if it's a struggle, Charlton, but you got to look at every NBA team that walks out there. They're not looking to lay down for you. They want to guarantee that they have a roster spot next year also, whether they make the playoffs or not. So, this is a grown man's game when you walk on the floor. Do you want to be a fan or do you want to be a player? And so when you walk out there as a player, you're letting the guy that you're competing against know that he's no better than you are.
Yeah, it's about competition. Who wants it the most? It's all fair and level war. The Pistons and the Hawks playing tonight up in Detroit, Big C. A game of the day that maybe people might call the game of the day. If you look at the Phoenix Suns and the New York Knicks, I'm not going to give out the score, but I will say at halftime, it was the Knicks were 63-56, Big C. And there's something about the greatness of watching NBA basketball at Madison Square Garden. And the Suns, they say, why we got to pick this time when they've got to go to visit Brooklyn and then go over there and find a way to play the Knicks when they're the hottest ticket in New York, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is a team that, the coach has been able to pull together this year, Charlton. When you think about what Fitzgerald, it'll come to me in a minute, former Chicago Bulls coach has done with this team. Julius Randle found a home as a leader after being discarded by the Lakers and the Pelicans. He came to the Big Apple and he's been able to shine. I think Derrick Rose is the glue that is pulling this team together.
He's playing better.
And you also got the young kid out of Duke that has been phenomenal this year, A.J. Barrett. He was thought to be the best player coming out of Duke. Zion Williams got all the publicity, but when you think about what Barrett is doing now with the Knicks, he is living up to all billing, Charlton. And so when you look at Thibodeau, who's the coach of the Knicks, he's got these guys playing. Phoenix is on this long Eastern Road swing, and they're having their wings handed to them.
Don't eat those apples in New York. Bring your own apples if that makes sense to you. It's all fair and level war. The Cleveland's at the Toronto Raptors. The Jazz at the Timberwolves. The Bulls at the Heat. The Clippers are at the Pelicans. The Clippers are playing some good basketball. The Grizzlies are at the Nuggets. The Mavericks are at the Kings. So that's tonight's NBA basketball matchup. I wish everybody nothing but the best. It's all fair in level war. Big C, I want to touch on this thing that happened across the country when you think about it. And I mean, everybody has their own opinion about how we're going to figure things out and how things are going to get better. And they will. Time always takes time to make things better. But I want to look at the African-American history. Black people across the sports continue to make history while knocking down doors and achieving roles that were previously thought unattainable by some people. Lofty expectations, not unfamiliar for D.C. Think about this. D.C. United's Anita Johnson, a Major League Soccer 26-year history, African-American person that had never assumed responsibility as a club's president of business operations. That all changed December when D.C. United announced the hiring of Anita Johnson, a tenured sports executive with years of experience helping professional teams improve their working culture. Big C is so important. So Johnson will always have the distinction of being the first, being attached to her name in the capacity. The North Carolina native certainly will not be the last, we hope. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when we think about the negative culture that has been in the nation's capital, Charlton, when it involves the sports teams there, so many various lawsuits have been filed for, inequity and inequality, Charlton, and basically harassment and assault. And so you bring in a woman to clean it up on all levels. You bring it into the football team as well as bring it into the soccer team, Charlton. And so when we look at the leadership of black women over the history of America, Charlton, it's been nothing but vanguard. And so to recognize what they can do as far as bringing in civil obedience to a professional organization, this is astonishing, Charlton, but America needs to understand that. Not only do we have a black vice president that's halfway running this country, Charlton, but black women have been so integral in the success of this nation.
Always rising and shining. When you think about Johnson, will always have that distinction of being the first, but she won't be the last. Assuming such a role filled with lofty expectations is not unfamiliar territory for the former president and chief operating officer of the Los Angeles Sparks, Big C. However, being the face of a franchise in a league not exactly celebrated for its racial diversity poses a different magnitude as she prepares for her first year in charge. Johnson also reflected on what a promotion like this means to her. Especially in this racial climate, we've always been pushing for acceptance in the world of sports that we dominated. Her position is another example of that, is pushing the game of soccer in America forward. During her time with the Sparks, Big C, Johnson helped start the annual We Are Women campaign, an initiative that celebrates women and young girls in the Los Angeles area who share a passion for empowering the women of the community of all ages and all interests. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when we look at the leadership role of black women throughout their history in America, they've always been in the forefront, taking the burden on, Charlton. They have not ducked their responsibilities and the responsibilities of others.
Yeah.
You know, people have tried to make an example out of them, but they don't back down. When you think about black women, they say, what do I have to lose? I can't. If I lose my children, then I lose everything. So they take this mothering role when they take a position of professionalism out in the sports world or in corporate America, Charlton, is that they have to be the overseer, the person who cannot fail. And that's what every corporation that has hired a black woman to lead it has gotten, Charlton, a person who feels that they cannot fail, and everyone needs to get in line and follow their leadership.
Yeah, a lot of people feel about getting in line and following the leadership. It's just so, I just appreciate seeing people push through no matter what they have to push through, no matter what people think about them. Well, maybe it's not time, maybe it's too soon. I wish everybody nothing but the best, Big C. With the NFL draft just a few short days away, no pro sports compares to the NFL, Big C. All others are just fighting for second and third seat in the room, Big C. I don't know if you've ever been in line at a restroom. It's a pretty long wait when you got to wait for 5 guys in one stall to get out of the room before you get in. But think about what's happening in the NFL. That's kind of the anticipation guys have. All the others are fighting for second and third place. And just in case you missed it, here are 9 of the NFL's draft biggest blunders in recent history. Close isn't enough, Big C, in the NFL draft. It's like horseshoes. There really isn't a painstaking evaluation process for all 32 teams where you almost need to take out nearly all the vegetables out of a given prospect, Big C. It's inexact science, but of course there's always a diamond in the rough and it falls through the cracks, and that's just part of the business. 2007, Big C. Jamarcus Russell over Calvin Johnson. It's never going to be a good thing when the highlights of the young pro career is on draft day, but exactly that's how it unfolded. Jamarcus Russell over the great Johnson, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, here was a guy, Charlton, that was not ready for prime time. His head was swollen more than his body was when it came to draft day and reporting to training camp. And he never wanted to or had the desire to play in the NFL.
Never had the desire. Russell appeared in 31 games as a pro, went 7-18 and 25 starts for Oakland in his final season in the league in 2009. He completed 48.8% of his passes and threw just 3 touchdowns along with 11 interceptions. But meanwhile, the very next pick after Russell at the draft wound up to be Calvin Johnson, who considered to be one of the greatest wide receivers of his era and a recent inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Over his career, Johnson set the NFL receiving yards, Big C. He had 1,964 yards and has the most consecutive 100-yard receiving games in league history at 8, Big C. Your thoughts?
And has a great nickname, Megatron, Charlton. When you think about Johnson out of Georgia Tech, one of the most outstanding receivers in the NFL. People say he retired too early, but he retired like a former teammate of his, Barry Sanders, out of frustration and not winning, Charlton.
Yeah, they had a lot of guys retire out of frustration in Detroit for not winning, and they're hoping that things would change because they have the great Jared Goff on the roster this year. We'll see what happens. Back in 2003, think about the draft. The great Jerome Mcdougall over Troy Polamalu, Big C. The Philadelphia Eagles traded up 15 spots to take defensive end Jerome Mcdougall with the number 15 overall pick in the 2003 draft, which is a move they later come to regret. McDougall's career was limited to just 37 games throughout his 4 seasons in the NFL. He only managed 3 sacks and 38 tackles over that time. At number 16, the Steelers selected Pro Bowl safety. It's a pro safety, almost every year a Pro Bowler, Troy Polamalu out of USC, who spent his entire 12-year Hall of Fame career in Pittsburgh and was one of the more dominant players to this day. He helped the Steelers win 2 Super Bowls, Big C, and was an 8-time Pro Bowler and won the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year in 2010. And they said he had great hair, too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about McDougall out of University of Miami, Charleston, this defensive lineman just could not live up to the billing. When he got to the NFL, he didn't realize you had to work because at Miami he didn't, and so he was a flash player. And when the NFL, you come in as a flash, they throw a little water on you, and a little flame will flicker out.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to McDougall before they decided to get rid of him after his 3rd year.
Yep. It's all fair and love and war. 2007 dropped Adam Carricker over Darrelle Revis. Carricker had himself the modest NFL career that stretched over the course of 7 years, where he earned around $18 million, Big C. Before the average man in the street, you sign up for that every day of the week. The Jets selected legendary cornerback Darrelle Revis. With the very next pick, Revis evolved into arguably the top cornerback of his era and was a legit shutdown corner for New York. He spent 11 years in the league, was named to the Pro Bowl 7 times, and was a 4-time first-team All-Pro selection. And that guy he was amazing now, and he's still thinking about him as amazing. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Adam Carricker is one of those players that proves what the combine can do for you. The Rams extended a first-round draft pick to him, but he was a bust in Los Angeles, in St. Louis at the time. They shipped him off to Washington, where he had a serviceable time there, Charleston. But Darrelle Revis, we know about Revis. You know, when Revis Island was created, he was the shutdown corner of his era in the NFL.
Yeah, there was Revis Island before there was Fight Island. It's all fan level war. 2002 draft. The great David Carr of Julius Peppers. Carr was picked to usher in a new era in the NFL as he joined the new expansion team in Houston in the Texans. However, his arrival from Houston to Houston did not produce a ton of wins out of the gate. Came out of Fresno State, Big C. His tenure, when you think about it with the Texans, he was 23-53 as a starter, completed 60% of his passes, most of the time laying on his back, Big C. They had a horrible offensive line, averaged 176.2 yards per passing game. Carolina Panthers, what did they do? They selected the great Julius Peppers, Big C. Right after Carr, Peppers went on to have a tremendous career that wrapped just around the back of 2018. He was named 9 Pro Bowls over his career and is a member of the All-Decades team for both the 2000s and 2010s. Perhaps Peppers also holds the NFL record for most forced fumbles of all time. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Derek Carr, Charleston, David Carr, this is a guy who set an NFL rookie record for being sacked as a quarterback. They did not tell him when he was in college at Fresno State that you have to learn how to read in the NFL, and that's something that he was slow in picking up and spent a lot of time on his back. But when you think about the great Julius Pepper out of North Carolina, Charleston, this was a dual-sport athlete when he was in college, played on the basketball team as well as the football team. He ended his NFL career top 5 all-time in sacks, Charleston, and as you mentioned, forced more fumbles than any defensive lineman in NFL history. Had a stellar career with the Green Bay Packers and Carolina Panthers.
Stellar career, Big C. 2000 draft Peter Work over Jamal Lewis. The Cincinnati Bengals were hoping to get a major boost of their offense when they selected receiver Peter Work, number 4 overall. However, the pass catcher never really lived up to that billing. After 3 consecutive seasons, the great Work hovered around 650 yards receiving. He did pop for 819 yards in 2003, but that was as prolific as he became. Lewis, on the other hand, was selected right after Ward by the Bengals and then AFC Central rivals in the Baltimore Ravens. Lewis went on to become one of the better backs in franchise history for the Ravens, leading the league in rushing in 2003. He's the franchise's all-time rushing yards leader and is first in team history with 45 rushing touchdowns. To make matters even worse, Lewis did play some of his best football against the Bengals, averaging 109 yards rushing per game against them through his career and 5.2 yards per carry. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, that was status quo for the Bengals there for several years, Charleston, to make a bad pick in the first round. Peter Ward, looked exciting when he was in college at Florida State. Had Charlie Ward thrown into him, a Heisman Trophy winner. But when he got to the NFL, he realized those defensive backs hit. And he wasn't so willing to go across the middle. But when you look at Jamal Lewis, an outstanding running back out of University of Tennessee, Charlton, with the next pick in the draft, he's one of only 8 running backs in NFL history to gain over 2,000 yards in a single season. And not only that, Charlton, he helped the Baltimore Ravens crush the New York Giants in the Super Bowl to get the Ravens' first Super Bowl win.
34-7 was that score, Big C. 2004 draft, Robert Gallery over Larry Fitzgerald. What? At the time, Robert Gallery was drafted to the Oakland Raiders. Hoped they were getting someone who could turn things around and be a man at the left tackle for the foreseeable future. However, the number 2 overall pick in 2004, he was widely considered a bust. The great Larry Fitzgerald, future Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald, who was picked number 3 overall by the Arizona Cardinals, is still running routes, Big C. Fitzgerald has been one of those more dependable and durable wide receivers of his era and seems well on his way to one day being enshrined in Canton as a pro member of the Football Hall of Fame. While his career isn't over just yet, he's already holds every meaningful receiver record for the Cardinals in history and number 2 all-time receiving yardage list behind one guy by the name of Flash 80, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Gallery, he was a hulking figure out at the University of Iowa, Charlton. And, this was another one of those bust picks that Al Davis was picking in the latter part of his career running the Raiders. And they could not hide Gallery. They started him out at tackle, tried to move him into guard to protect him, and there was just no end in sight for defensive linemen running over it.
Yep.
Larry Fitzgerald speaks for himself as far as the history that he has created in the NFL with the Cardinals, Charlton, his entire career.
Yeah.
Being the second most productive wide receiver in NFL history, Charlton. He's made one Super Bowl, did not win against the Steelers, but his career has never been tarnished by anything other than greatness.
Never been tarnished. Only great Big C 2005 draft, Fabian Washington over Aaron Rodgers. What? Can you make a sense out of that? Essentially, everybody in the NFL, they whiffed on this. And not just the Raiders, Big C, who took cornerback Fabian Washington. And Rodgers was right in their backyard in Berkeley, Big C. One pick before the touchdown, Aaron Rodgers, however, is a bit more jarring when you think about how they stack right next to each other, one after the other, Big C. Washington played just 3 seasons for the Raiders. The Raiders went 4-12, which is one of the worst records in the entire NFL. Of course, if Rodgers was still able to become the quarterback we know today, the Raiders may be, you think about what they could have been, Big C. Some of the same regards as the Packers are right now and possibly have a Super Bowl title. And he was in their own backyard, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about you've named 3 draft picks for the Raiders. So you started out with DeMarcus Russell. You've gone to Gallery, and now you've gone to Washington. All 3 of those players combined, Charlton's career did not exceed the length of time that Aaron Rodgers has played in the NFL. So it shows you have to get the draft right. The draft is a crapshoot. Nothing is guaranteed, and you got all these guys that your buddy Mel Kiper and Todd McShay talk about can't-miss projects, Charlton, and all of a sudden they're living in the project.
Yeah, it's all fair enough, and we're moving on up to the east side. Big C 2005, Mike Williams and DeMarcus Ware. This is another missed opportunity by a team in the 2005 draft. As for Williams, he caught just 37 passes through his 22 career games with the Lions and total 449 yards receiving. Had the Detroit Lions elected to address their defensive their needs on defense, bringing in receiver Mike Williams at number 10 overall, they could have been looking at a generational pass rusher. Once the Lions took Williams, the Dallas Cowboys, they tapped outside linebacker DeMarcus Ware at number 11 overall. Ware went on to become one of the best pass rushers in the NFL of his era, Big C, and Dallas's all-time leader in sacks, forced fumbles, tackles for a loss, and quarterback hits. He also helped the Broncos to Super Bowl 50, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Detroit Lions went out there to get a receiver at USC, Charlton. Found out he couldn't catch a football sitting on a block of ice, butt naked in a freezer. It's cold in Detroit compared to California.
They got a dome.
Mike Williams' career wasn't as long as his hair, Charlton. But when you think about DeMarcus Ware and his productivity with the Dallas Cowboys, became an all-pro perennial pass rusher. Moved his career on to Mile High up there in Denver, Charlton, and became a staple on that defense with Peyton Manning on offense.
Yep.
And they went on to beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl in San Francisco.
Yeah, they went on to beat the Panthers in the city by the Bay, Big C. 2002 draft Napoleon Harris over the great Ed Reed. What? The Raiders, unfortunately, had a lot of misses on this list. The latest is picking linebacker Napoleon Harris, number 23 overall. Back in 2002, the Northwestern product was productive out of the gate and even had a 2003 season where he totaled 110 tackles and 3 forced fumbles. However, Harris' career with the Raiders only lasted 3 seasons after being drafted right behind them undrafted. What? the Ravens selected safety Ed Hall of Fame Reed, Big C, who put together a Hall of Fame career. Reed was another player who simply dominated the competition over his time in the league and holds the Ravens' franchise record in interception return yards, and passes defended. Reed is also tied for the most playoff interceptions at 9 in NFL history, and yes, he was overlooked. Big C, your thoughts?
Now, I don't think during this list, Jonathan, that the Raiders have had 9 playoff appearances.
No.
But you think about it, Ed Reed, I mean, you can't say enough about Napoleon Harris, poor kid, Jonathan. But Ed Reed, one of the greatest safeties in the history of the NFL. To me, I think he's the most intelligent defensive back in the history of the league, Jonathan, when you think about his accomplishments and what he's been able to do. Two-time Super Bowl champion with the Ravens, Jonathan. But people talk about a quarterback on offense.
Yeah.
Ed Reed was all of that out of the University of Miami. I mean, this is a tremendous mental and physical talent during his time in the NFL.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about some of these great players, Big C, these great athletes, and sometimes they get overlooked, like Aaron Rodgers and then Ed Reed. They can get overlooked, and sometimes you get overlooked, but when you get the chance to shine, you just shine, and that's what people like to do. I want to touch on, before we close, on the Oscars. I know you like the Oscars, Big C, and you think about Mike Conley, Kevin Durant, and two distant strangers. Kevin Durant and Mike Conley Jr. took home the new kind of trophy Sunday night. The duo, along with Durant's businessman, Rich Klillman, Big C, won the Academy Awards for Two Distant Strangers on Sunday when it won the Oscar for Best Live Action Short Film, and Durant and Conley served as executive producers on the film and joined Kobe Bryant as the only NBA players to have won an Oscar, Big C. 2018, if you recall, the great Kobe Bryant became the first professional athlete to win an Oscar when Dear Basketball took home the Best Animated Short Film in 2018. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I recommend everybody watch Two Distant Strangers. I saw this movie 2 weeks ago, and it's a state of realism for black people of what's going on today in society. It's what we witness every day on the newsreel, Charlton. I know a lot of people know the movie that the great actor Bill Murray did, Groundhog Day.
Yeah, Groundhog Day.
This is Groundhog Day for black people, Charlton. If you watch this movie, it will touch you, regardless of your culture, because you witness it every night on the news. When you turn on the news, you will see two distant strangers playing out on the TV set.
Yeah, it's all fair and love and war. There's a lot of good things going on in sports, Big C, and I appreciate when people show their talent outside of the sports arena. It really shows how dynamic they are. I want to close out on one story. We kind of already talked about it, but I want to close out on that NBA game of the night. The New York Knicks are closing in on and ending the third longest playoff drought in the NBA, Big C. Tonight, the Knicks try to move one step closer to the goal while ensuring the Phoenix Suns wait a bit longer to enjoy clinching a postseason spot on their own. They were in the cellar last year, the Suns, Big C. The pair of teams are enjoying rare playoff pushes, scheduled to meet tonight. We talked about the halftime score earlier. In an attempt to extend the longest winning streak in 8 years by the Knicks, the Knicks won their 9th straight game Saturday afternoon when they cruised to a 121-3 victory over the visiting Toronto Raptors. The Suns missed a chance to cut their magic number to clinch a playoff spot to 1 on Sunday afternoon. They squandered a 13-point lead in the first half, and they fell 128-119 to the Brooklyn Nets. Big C, it is must-see basketball, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the Knicks are must-see basketball. When you think about the Big Apple and the excitement that it has brought to the NBA this year, with two teams that are going to be in the playoffs, you're going to have the number 1 seed in the Nets, Charlton, and you most likely have a number 4 or 5 seed with the Knicks. But this is great for the NBA all the way around. You got budding superstars there with Julius Randle. You know, R.J. Barrett has risen to his draft stock, Charlton. He's living up to the astonishment that he had coming out of college. And Derrick Rose has stabilized that whole organization. Chris Paul has done an admirable job out there keeping those young Phoenix Suns together.
Yep.
But I think it's too much apple falling on them tonight.
Too much apple. Be careful of those apples, especially when they fall. It's all fair and level. I'm going to cover one more. I got one more story for NBA since you talked about apples, Big C. I want to bring some apples to the East Coast. They say they're healthy for you. Earlier this month, the Golden State Warriors were 4 games under 500, in danger of missing the playoffs for the second straight season Now following their 117-113 win over the Sacramento Kings on Sunday night, they're 31-30 and tied for 9th place in the Western Conference. En route to finishing the night with 37 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists, Curry also broke the NBA record for most made threes in a single month during the regular season. He made 7 threes, Big C, against the Kings, bringing his total in April and still counting to 85. The previous record in April was 82, set by James Harden, November 2019. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when we think about him eclipsing James Harden's record, Charlton, against the woeful Sacramento Kings, you got to go all the way back to 1986 when Larry Bird led the NBA in three-point shots for a season.
Yeah.
He had 86 in 1986.
Wow.
For the entire season, 86 three-pointers made. And now Stephen Curry will eclipse that in 1 month in the NBA, Charlton. What an outstanding player.
Yeah, it's amazing, an outstanding player. It's all fair in love and war. And just like the Dodgers and the Padres went to overtime, I'm going to give you one more baseball overtime story just to whet your palate, Big C, so you're not drunk on basketball. The Astros rookie Ken Emmanuel makes history with the first 8 2/3 inning relief appearance since 1988. Emmanuel, 28, replaced Odorizzi, Big C, and nearly tossed a complete game in relief, throwing 8 2/3 innings on 90 pitches. It's the longest relief appearance in Astros history. Emmanuel held the Angels to 2 solo home runs. The great Albert Pujols and Shohei Ohtani did. He went yard, Big C, and 5 hits in those 8 2/3 innings. Houston, was it a football game? 16, LA Angels 2. How's that for a Major League Baseball debut? And then Emmanuel, Big C, in his first pitcher, thrown to at least 8 innings in relief pitch since the way LeBlanc did it for the Mariners in June of 2019. He's the first pitcher to throw 8 2/3 innings in his Major League Baseball debut since the great Jesse Lynch in 2007, and the first pitcher to throw 8 innings in relief in his MLB debut since Roger Mason in 1984. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, here's a young man not probably expecting to get any work on the night, Charlton, and
Yeah.
the manager calls on you to wake up in the bullpen
Wake up!
and get ready. And you had a mouthful of sunflower seeds over there taking a nap.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you find yourself having to work overtime basically as
Yeah.
a relief pitcher. I mean,
Yeah.
you might get 1 to 2 innings normally, but you got to go out there basically and throw a complete game because 8 2/3 is a complete game. The
Yeah.
starter only faced one batter before he had a little soreness in his elbow, Charlton, and he was taken from the game. But to come out, I mean, this young man has to be proud. I know they gave him the game ball for those accolades.
Yeah, he got the game ball and maybe a new box of raisins. There's 5 pitchers to accomplish the feat. Emmanuel for the Astros, April 24th, 2021, 8 2/3 innings versus the Angels. Neil Allen, the Yankees, May 31, 1988, 9 innings versus the A's. Bob Stanley, the Red Sox, May 22nd, 1983, 10 innings versus the Twins. And Dave Tobick, the Tigers, June 9th, 1982, 8 2/3 innings versus Cleveland. And Lamar Hoyt, Big C, the White Sox, September 27, 1981, 9 innings versus the A's. Emmanuel threw 90 pitches Saturday, and Allen threw 111 pitches in his 9-inning relief appearance in 1988. And they both need to put their arms on ice, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, ironically, I remember Lamar Hoyt. I mean, he was a great knuckleballer for the Tigers, Charlton. I mean, the White Sox.
Yeah.
But, you know, baseball is one of those iconic games, Charlton, that you never know when you're going to be called on to be that superstar.
Yeah, to be that superstar. But they rise and shine, and it's all fair in love and war. We went extra innings, Big C. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble, with all you've got to use. How can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we inch closer and closer to the NFL draft at 8 p.m. on Thursday night, Charlton, and everybody is starting to get those butterflies. Be careful with what you wish for in the first round because you need a lot more than just that. Once again, I'm going to thank the frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, and first responders. They're always first rounders, Charlton.
They're always first rounders when they rise and shine. You can rise and shine too, even with butterflies, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, where you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, pick up the phone and ask for help. Like my mom always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. Pick up the phone and get somebody some help. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.